adjetivos para calificar lo que significa tener con nosotros en el mismo escenario, en el mismo momento del tiempo. Y aquí, en México DF, en la mejor y mayor campus party de la historia, a los padres fundadores. Con nosotros, Gore, Berners-Lee y Vinton, Cerf. ¡Un aplauso, por favor! Les dejo en buenas manos. Tony, ongoing con vosotros.
Siéntense. Agáchase.
Hello. Thank you all for coming. We'll all try and talk slowly for the benefit of the translators. So the format is that I'm going to ask a few questions of our panelists today, and then we're going to have a bit of a free-form discussion, and then we're opening it to questions from the floor, and I think they're bringing those in via Twitter, if I have that right. So I wanted to start with you, Mr. Gore, and with a bit of your history in relation to the internet. In 1995, you held the very seminal... Oh, apparently you're to speak last. No one told me that. Tim, why don't we start with you then? You've been very vocal in the United Kingdom, where we both live, in talking to Parliament about the extent to which network access is a human right, and the extent to which networks shouldn't be treated as merely a convenient way for getting top 40 music without paying for it, and regulating networks as though the only people who have a stake in them is the entertainment industry is a scary idea. Here in Mexico, the Senate has recently rejected ACTA, the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement, but it's likely that it may still come to pass. Do you have any feelings about how we get the world's governments to take the network more seriously?
Do I have any feelings? I could talk about it for hours. I need a microphone. Here? Okay. Yes, of course I have a lot of feelings, but of course, in a way, the internet and the fact that you can communicate between one person and another through all these computers that are connected together is something that I prefer to take for granted. Because the great thing for me about the internet technology, which was put together more than 40 years ago, is that it's a platform. It's just a platform. I could build what I wanted to do on it. So 40 years ago, when Vinton invented the internet, he didn't have in mind all the things that people would do with it. He just made it as a general purpose tool. 20 years ago, when I invented the web, I could use the internet because it was a platform, and I built a new platform, the web, and the idea is that that should be a solid platform that anybody can do anything with too. You, of course, are all the sorts of people who are going to be doing really exciting things using the web as a platform. And some of the things you will build new platforms on top of that, like the platforms being built now of web applications. So all this depends on the fact that you can go and use the internet for whatever you can imagine. You can go and make a website with whatever you can imagine. That's the exciting power of computers, that if you can imagine them doing something, you can do it. And you don't have to ask anybody. It's not a centralized system. I didn't have to. When I invented the web, I wrote the server code and wrote the client code, I didn't have to go and ask Vint, please, can I make a new application? I didn't have to go and ask Steve Jobs. I didn't have to ask anybody. Actually, I did have to ask somebody for the port number 80. But before that, I just used port number 2784, which was my parents' phone number. It's decentralized. Anybody can do what they want. And that is the power of it. That's why it's so important. The important thing for governments to realize is that what's exciting about it is all the things that are happening in the future. Yes, governments are being pushed by large record companies to try to control all the children out there who are stealing music. But really, of all the companies out there that are doing exciting things on the internet, only a very small number of those are music companies. And a lot of the people doing very exciting things in music are really finding a huge benefit from the internet. So, yes, I think it's really important that we keep it open. We keep it so that when you invent a new idea, when you create a new type of website, or you create a new protocol on the internet, you can just go and implement it. And there's not somebody in the central government that you have to register it with. And that basically we keep this series.
And it goes, for me, it goes back to one of the distinctions between television and the internet. Because television is so centralized, and because access to the privilege of presenting ideas on a wholesale basis over television requires large amounts of money, it has resulted, I'll use my country as an example, in organized propaganda campaigns on issues like climate, for example, and almost every public policy question. Now, the people sit in front of the television. In my country, the average individual watches television 5 hours per day, which is truly astonishing. And we are subjected to this massive set of campaigns to shape thinking, and the ability to find out what is true is sharply diminished. After World War II, a European philosopher who studied the impact of organized propaganda on democratic discourse wrote these words. Theodor Adorno was his name. He said, when all questions of truth are converted into when all questions of fact are converted into questions of power, it attacks the very heart of the distinction between what is true and what is false. Now, the democratic discourse in my country in 2002, the period after the 9/11 attacks, was dominated by organized efforts to convince people that the person responsible for flying those planes into the World Trade Center towers and the Pentagon was Saddam Hussein. Well, of course, he had absolutely nothing to do with it. But when the Senate voted to invade Iraq, 2/3 of the American people believed that as the leader of Iraq, Saddam Hussein was responsible for attacking us. So the question of fact had been converted into a question of power. The distinction between truth and falsehood had been attacked, and we made very bad decisions. Now, there is widespread disagreement and confusion about whether putting 90 million tons of global warming pollution into the atmosphere every 24 hours does what the scientists say the laws of physics mandate that it does. It traps heat. And look at what's been happening here in Mexico. Look at the events of the last year around the world, the flooding in Pakistan, the flooding in Australia, the drought and fires in Russia, the fires in the U.S.'s Southwest. My home city of Nashville had a 1,000-year rainfall, and the list goes on and on. The Mississippi River, largest flood in history. Missouri River, largest flood in history. I could go on with this list. And now, still, people say, oh, I'm not sure. Well, companies and coal companies are spending billions of dollars to promote a version of reality that is false. Now, by the way, I did want to get this in. Here in Mexico City, September 14th, the Climate Project is launching a global event. It's already been announced, but it will start at 7 p.m. Mexico City time, September 14th, with a special slideshow that I'm completing now that will stream live on the internet, and then followed by a discussion. And then at 7 p.m. in the next time zone west, it will be given in English, and it will continue for 24 hours in all 24 time zones at the same time, local time, everywhere on Earth, and come back around at 7 p.m. Eastern Time in New York City, where I will give the last of these slideshows. And it is called 24 Hours of Reality. And we are attempting to present the truth about the climate crisis on the internet. And I would love to have the support of campesinos here and those connected to us right now on the internet all over the world to promote the participation in that event.